it had two parts. The synthesis had two parts. So the first part was Josiane's beautiful narrative she just presented. And the second part was about kind of documenting the examples of social innovations around the world mentioned during the dine arounds and kind of the people that we spoke with. And it's about kind of documenting what's moving people and what's concerning them right now. And we've grouped them into different kind of ways our capacity to act has shown up around the world. So first, in how we live together. So around the world, people were concerned about people falling through the cracks, how we support each other, and how we accept others who are different from us. So those two questions were main questions people were asking. So a lot of places were addressing kind of social isolation issues, from youth group connecting elderly group in Mexico, and kind of mobilizing young people, kind of mobilizing everyday actions of compassion and organizing climathons in the Philippines, to kind of community citizen focus on child poverty and isolation in Japan. And also people were taking different kind of action and changing attitude on how we view and accept one another. So in Spain, a leading business school is working with Barcelona City Council to tackle refugee and migration challenge in Europe. In Glasgow, an art studio we spoke with is currently working on facilitating cultural exchange between artists across different contexts. And then how we organize and govern was a key topic as well. So many people are grappling with very complicated political situations in their own country at the moment. So there's both kind of resistance and understanding is needed in these challenging times. So more than ever, people were recognizing that social innovation is political. So from Brazil to Hong Kong, people talked about this kind of social and political context, the political leadership vacuum, and how the civic movements are having their moment in changing the narratives. So one example was a Brazilian kind of Northeast network in Brazil, which is known to be the poorest region in Brazil, is framing the place as a place of creativity. Other places such as Kuwait, people talked about trust and collaboration within the government to tackle the coronavirus. And in South Africa, people talked about kind of opportunity to overhaul systems that doesn't work anymore. But also they were also concerned about the room for corruption. And this kind of new social contract was talked about not just in terms of kind of the relationship between government and citizens, but a lot of organizations were kind of searching for this kind of new social contract. And then how we care. The pandemic has highlighted how much kind of caring was kind of invisible in our society, but how much we were dependent on it. And people talked about care not as a top-down national response, but care lens kind of focused on relationships. In Canada, people talked about Indigenous way of knowing, being, feeling, doing, and projects such as Restoring Sacred Bond Initiative is matching kind of birth helpers with Indigenous mothers. The REACH network, a global human-centered design network, is looking at care from a community resilience perspective through their projects in different countries. And in Korea, participants were talking about how this crisis is turning into kind of a long-term management situation focused on local care and welfare. And in how we learn, I think people are becoming more aware of and questioning where we get our knowledge and how it influences our behavior and everyday action. In Manitoba, Canada, a participant questioned whose knowledge are we talking about and proposed a different worldview where the goal is to live a good life in balance and relationship with each other and with the earth. And the REACH network, again, talked about kind of different levels of knowledge. So being able to zoom out and asking the global questions, common global questions, and ability to zoom in, looking into kind of local diverse actions happening. And in terms of how we work, this was one very strong theme that came out from the Dine Arounds. So the pandemic has kind of blurred the line between the personal and the professional. So, and people are trying to adapt really quickly to the situation. So in Glasgow, people talked about how organizations are forced to innovate and experiment new formats in these times. In South Africa, university has formed a dedicated task force team to think about the future at this pressing time. And a social impact investor participant shared their experience in kind of uh, pivoting to rapid response funding. In London, practitioners that work with young refugees asked how we can prepare the young people and organizations for the future to build capacity to adapt and change continuously. And collaboration was another key thing identified by people around the world. So in Canada, a group of foundations are working together by sharing resources and working across their boards to help an Indigenous community. In economic activity, many people around the world have found hope in the small and the local. In Hong Kong, with the challenging political situation, people are turning more towards grassroots, small-scale actions like local food, local production, local recycling and shops. And also the pandemic has opened up opportunities to rural and small-scale businesses in Korea. And in Paris, the idea of 15-minute city is taking hold. And last but not least, there was a lot kind of reflection on our ability to, in our social imagination. So Jeff Morgan and Untitled Festival questions and reflected that the world is facing a deficit of social imagination at the moment. And in Japan, in one of the dine arounds, Ai Hasegawa artist's work was mentioned in the context of reimagining science and technology, medicine and bioethics. And this artist kind of uses kind of speculative design and critical design in her work to really to make people think about kind of the environmental crisis that is about to happen.